Minister Anne Tolley.
Mr Speaker, I'm very proud to be a part of a can-do government. We aren't afraid of working hard, and we're certainly a government that has rolled up its sleeves and been working hard for New Zealanders through some of the toughest times. Through some of the toughest times that people of my generation, my children's generation, and hopefully my grandchildren's generation will ever experience. Yes, we have borrowed as a government, we have borrowed a lot of money, but we borrowed that money to protect some of the most vulnerable in our communities during that economic crisis. We talked about it taking the edge off the crisis for those vulnerable New Zealanders. We used that money to lift the minimum wage each year. We used that money to fund free tertiary study for kids who had fallen out of school under what we called the Youth Guarantee. We wanted to give them the opportunity to be kept off the streets and off the dole and in education. We used that money to fund trades academies and service academies to help schools keep kids in school. And not only did we use that money to help all of those people in our community, we introduced national standards to make sure that schools and parents had good information so that they could intervene when their kids weren't learning to read and write and do maths. And I refer to the speaker previous to me who talked about the importance of education to young Māori New Zealanders, and how if we are to lift the economic performance of this country, that is an enormous section of our community that needs to lift its educational standards so that it can gain qualifications and take its full place in our community. We also introduced things like the 90-day trial to make sure that not only could employers take a chance on employing someone, but to give people who would normally, in deep economic crisis, have not had the opportunity to get their first job, to get that first step on the ladder. And in corrections, of course, we rely on that when we're talking to employers about giving an ex-prisoner a go. It allows them to take a choice. We introduced time limits on the RMA consents for large projects so that we could get some of these large projects off the books, out of the courts, and actually happening in New Zealand. We funded, during that time of deep economic crisis, multi-billion dollars worth of infrastructure projects which supported thousands and thousands of jobs. And one of those, of course, is the roads of national significance, Mr Speaker, which in my electorate, the Labour list member continues to misrepresent and speak against in the local newspaper. Of course, what that member and Labour and the Greens don't understand is that those roads of national significance aren't all in Auckland. In fact, there's a very important one that runs through Tauranga that all the local governments in my electorate, that is the Whakatane District Council, the Opotiki District Council and the Gisborne District Council supported, because they knew how important it was for them to get their freight to either the Port of Tauranga or the ports of Auckland. And 70% of Gisborne's freight actually goes north. Despite what some of the rail enthusiasts would have us believe, 70% of Gisborne's freight goes north to the Port of Auckland or the Port of Tauranga. And of course we've done a lot more despite the very unbalanced economy we inherited from that wastrel Labour government, the global financial crisis and our own New Zealand recession, and of course the Canterbury earthquakes and the large destruction of our second largest city. We are a government that rolls up its sleeves and does what needs to be done to build a brighter future for New Zealand. But wait, there is more. And the PM yesterday laid out this government's plans for 2013. Mr. Speaker, he talked of the 4 priorities of this government. Responsible management of our finances. This government understands that it actually isn't our money. It is actually the money of hard-working New Zealanders. So the government has a responsibility to manage that responsibly, to make sure that when they spend that money, they are spending it effectively and efficiently, something that the other side of the House doesn't understand. There are no quick fixes for this economy, and there are no silver bullets. One of the things this government has done, and has done successfully, is pull back the out-of-control spending by government that the previous Labor government went crazy on. They lost control of government spending. And even today, when you hear the Labor members talking about what they're going to do, it's all about more money, spend more money. Their answer to anything is to throw more money at it. Well, this government has had to stop doing that. They've had to pull back on government expenditure because, like every other New Zealand household, we've had to have a look at our own budgets, and we've had to cut back on the frivolous, ineffective, inefficient spending in order to pay the bills. Mr. Speaker, the second priority for this government is one of the most important for the future, and that is boosting skills and supporting jobs. We had young people getting NCA credits, getting to the end of their high school years and finding they were fully qualified but with no career path. They hadn't taken the right subjects. So what we did, they had to actually go backwards and restudy subjects in order to get onto tertiary education, to get their qualifications before they could ever consider a job. And so what we did was we got industry, we got education, and we got career experts around the table and developed 5 vocational pathways that will help lead young New Zealanders down a path that will lead to a qualification that they need for a job. We are funding over 4,000 places in trades and service academies. And again, I look at my own electorate. There are kids right at the top of the East Coast who get to the school bus by 6 o'clock on a Friday morning. Some of them have travelled 3/4 of an hour prior to that to reach that point. They travel down to Gisborne for their daily session at the Polytech, and they're lucky to be home by 8 o'clock at night. Their parents say they are better students today, they are engaged in learning, they have a clear expectation of what they want to do with their lives, and they are working hard and being successful. That is what trades academies are doing for youngsters throughout New Zealand. Mr. Speaker, the Gisborne Girls High School has one of the most successful service academies in the country. We pay them for 20. They have 29 enrolled and a waiting list of over 50. Mr. Speaker, these are practical, sensible things that this government has done to make sure that young people have the opportunities they need to get the skills that they need to take their part in our communities. And the recent announcements around apprentices expand those number of opportunities. Finally, Mr. Speaker, can I talk about the third priority, which is delivering on our public services? And the public have a right to expect high-quality public services. They have a right to expect that they send their kids down the road to the local school, they will actually learn to read, write and do maths. They have an expectation, rightly so, that their kids will get a qualification, that they can turn up at their local hospital and be seen in the emergency department in a reasonable time, and of course that they can get their hip operations and their cataracts done at their local hospital as well. They can reasonably expect to feel safe in their homes. Crime rates are the lowest they've been for 30 years. Mr. Speaker, finally, the fourth priority is rebuilding Christchurch. That is important. We heard today that we are delivering on that. I'm proud to be part of a can-do government.
I